Welcome to Women in the Music Industry, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in an industry that has long been dominated by men. I'm your host, Rob Wells, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this empowering journey. Each episode of this podcast will be dedicated to exploring the inspiring stories, accomplishments, and struggles of the extraordinary women who have defied the odds and made waves in the music business. Together, we'll delve into the journeys of female artists, songwriters, producers, musicians, managers, executives, and all those who have helped play a pivotal role behind the scenes. We'll uncover the stories that deserve to be heard, as well as celebrate the triumphs, challenges, and unique perspectives that women bring to the music industry. Whether you're a fan of music, an aspiring artist, or simply curious about the inner workings of the music business, this podcast will offer a valuable perspective. Together, we'll celebrate the power of music and the strength of these inspiring women. So join us as we amplify their voices and together pave the way for a future where women in the music business are no longer the exception, but the rule. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Songwriter's Piano, an easy-to-use app for songwriters and lyricists to use when coming up with song ideas when there's no instrument around or nobody to play one. With the Songwriter's Piano, one can easily play commonly used pop songwriting chord sequences at the touch of a screen, in any key, in 3 different chord variations, all played on a gorgeously recorded grand piano. Download the Songwriter's Piano by Play Like Me apps today, found on both iOS and Android stores everywhere. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Women in the Music Industry. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, welcome. For those that are returning, I am so happy that you're back. Today's guest is none other than my good friend, Nashville-based versatile music producer, songwriter, and mixer, Karen Kosowski. She has a wide resume of hits. Believe me, check this out. Karen produced and played on the majority of Mickey Guyton's Grammy-nominated album, Remember Her Name, which is on Capitol Records Nashville. She is also a co-writer on several of those tracks and a mixer on 2 of those tracks. That album received 3 Grammy nominations, including Best Country Album, and was hailed by NPR as one of the standout country pop works of the modern era. Amazing. Karen arranged, produced, and played piano with Guyton for her live performance of the Star Spangled Banner at Super Bowl 56. Holy smokes, I can't even imagine what that was like. Previously, Karen produced the majority of the Washboard Union's Everbound album, which was awarded Roots Album of the Year at the 2020 Canadian Country Music Awards and contained the certified gold #2 Canadian country radio single, Country Thunder. She produced, mixed, and co-wrote the 6-week #1 Australian country radio single, APRA Award-nominated Memphis T-shirt for Melanie Dyer, and has 2 more Canadian Gold certifications, a Platinum certification, and a #1 Canadian country radio single for songwriting cuts with Tim Hicks, a little song called What a Song Should Do, and Brett Kissel, a song called Anthem, and as well, She Drives Me Crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Karen Kosowski. Yay!
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
It's great to have you. Great to have you. I really thank you for your time. I know you've got a crazy busy schedule. You've just got millions of things happening every day. So somehow you've carved out a little bit of time for us here. And I horribly have eaten into some of that time, going to pick up my son from summer camp, and he was running a little bit late. So I apologize about that. I know your time is very limited, but very happy you're here.
Good. It's all good.
Yeah. Where are you right now? Is this your home studio right now, or?
This is my studio in Nashville. It's not in my home. I actually am really enjoying not having a studio in my home.
Sure.
I do go back and forth. Sometimes it's like, man, it would be so great to just wear my pajamas today because no one's coming in to work with me. And but no, I have an outside studio. And this is my room that I'm in, and I do writing sessions here, and I do overdubs and vocals, and I can pretty much record anything here. I wouldn't put a drum kit in my booth though. It's a large booth, but I'm not tracking drums in my room.
Right, right. Is this a shared space? Is it like, do you have other studios beside you, or is it sort of in an industrial area? How does it work?
Yeah, so I'm in a building where there is a larger tracking floor in the front of the building. And then there's like a publishing company up front as well. They have some offices. And then I rent a like sort of Studio B in the back of the building. And I have my own separate entrance. And it's nestled right amongst all the massive studios here in Berry Hill in Nashville. So just down the street from me is Blackbird and, Addiction Studios and the former House of Blues Studios, which, 9 different studios. They're now East Iris Studios, I think, owned by Universal. So, there's Station West just down the street and Vance Powell's place and Peter Frampton has a spot. And it's just like I'm surrounded by intimidation.
Sure. The pressure's on.
And inspiration.
Yeah.
It's both.
I'll never forget the first time I got off the plane in Nashville, and just even in the airport where you just see all the musical instruments hanging up on the walls and in displays. And then you drive down the street and there's all these signs up saying, congratulations to this songwriter for this #1 song. And I just thought it was so cool. I think it's probably the only place in the world where they really honor the song and the songwriter. It's really a big part of the city, isn't it?
I think so. I don't know any other city where music is featured so prominently in pretty much everything, even just down to like the airport. You get off the plane and there's, guitars on the walls and posters and messages coming over the PA from country stars telling you where to pick up your bags,
That's hilarious.
It's just kind of everywhere. Yeah, it's a really unique thing.
Do you ever get sick of it? For example, I went on a Disney cruise years and years ago, and everywhere you turn is a Disney character. And I think by the end of the 4-day cruise that I was on, I wanted to murder Mickey Mouse. I not exactly murder, but just harm a little bit, or just say something to Mickey, just back off a little bit if that's all right. Does that sort of ever get to you in Nashville, or is it just hugely inspiring? Just the fact that everywhere where you turn, it's really just centered around music.
I think it's really inspiring. The nerd in me that always loved like anything music themed. Like when I was growing up, I had like, a watch that had piano keys going around the band and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, oh, great. The convention center here is shaped like a piano, or, like things like that. I like it. I find it inspiring. I find the energy really, really great. It's always nice, to get a change of scene every now and then and kind of, not feel like you're going to walk into someone, as you're walking down the street, Yeah. Nashville has that awesome small town thing still, even though it's, it's just growing like crazy. It's really easy to find the music scene here. And you can be walking down my street, I'm going for a walk and I'm running into other people who are, taking a little break from their studio session and walking down the street to grab a bite to eat or just take a phone call. And it's like, you're constantly bumping into people like that. And it's, I would say it's super inspiring,
very much
good energy to be around.
Great energy. I find the same thing whenever I go to a writing camp. I love the fact that there's all these different rooms that have 3 people in there. And, if you're in a really good camp, you've got a great space where there's 9 rooms that are right beside each other. And maybe if you're listening carefully, you can hear a little bit of bleed coming through the walls. And I just love that excitement of just knowing that there's something else happening on the other side of that wall, that they're creating something that could be the next biggest thing. And I'm just thinking, well, if that's going on, I really have to bring my absolute A game to this day and just really, not that I ever don't bring my A game, but it's just on those writing camps, you just really feel the heat turned on quite a bit. And just, I find that I pretty much get my best songs ever at a writing camp rather than just writing here, very separated from everybody else.
Oh, interesting. So it's like that little extra bit of like, little bit of pressure, a little bit of energy. It just kind of puts you over the top.
Yeah, and it's not really competition either. It's just more like, you just feel that great energy that's going on around you, that everyone's all excited, everyone's really pumped. You're meeting people that you've never worked with before, and you're just excited to just get something out of the day, especially when you're at one of those writing camps where they make you play your song at the end of the day. That's
Oh God, yeah.
the most nerve-wracking thing. I went to a songwriting camp in France, and all these writers that I grew up listening to, they were there, and one of them was Kathy Dennis, who was at this camp, and I'm just like, man, I love all your songs, and now I have to play my song in front of you at 11 o'clock at night, and you think that your song is going to be really, really good and received well. And then you end up hearing the other songs that were done in the other rooms, and your head is just in your hands, just like, my God, what did we do? And then you play yours. But the best thing about it is that the next day you go in there to your next session and you're like, I have to be better than what I did before. I have to really go in and really just turn that heat up. And I'm sure that must happen in Nashville. That must happen. The fact that that in all these rooms and all these spaces that there's just so much going on, and that you really just have to be the best of the best in order to get things going on, which clearly you are.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's definitely a hustle, and like Nashville, the writing scene, I would say it's funny that you bring up writing camps, because I feel like the writing scene here is so structured and organized and constant. Like, I've never experienced anything like that in any other city, where every day at like 11 a.m., that there are hundreds of rooms across the city where everyone's just writing. And then, some people have a second write later in the day, and it's a real machine. So I remember like when I was in Toronto, and doing a bunch of writing and work there, and I was there for a long time, and I felt like you never really heard about people doing such organized writing schedules like that, and there's people here who just do 2 writes a day for 5 days a week, or even sometimes 6. It's a real kick in the ass. That's
it's a real job. They bring their bagged lunch or their boxed lunch and water, and away they go and finish in 4 hours and move on to the next one, and then head home and greet the family. Yeah, it's
you're cutting vocals and you're getting out, and it's like, okay.
Amazing. Yeah. Listen, sorry, we didn't even get into the beginning stages of your career, and I'd love to know. I want to know everything. You and I met years ago at various different camps that were happening, but then we spent a lot of time at the Next Star, which was a nice little TV show on YTV that where they look for 12-year-old kids to pick 6 of them and then get them to record a song, and then they put out a little record and they get to do their own videos and things like that. But you and I were the producers that were assigned one producer per artist that they were selecting, and we got to spend a lot of time there. But I know a little bit about you, and I see your posts and everything, but I'd just love to know the whole story. If you can give me the long story or the short story if you want, but just, I know you're from Winnipeg. That's you're from the suburbs of Winnipeg, and I'll just let you take it from here. If you could just sort of tell me your musical journey from the beginning. Sure.
Well, yeah, I was born and raised in Winnipeg. And I always was involved in music from an early age. My parents had me in music lessons, and then, sort of group lessons, piano lessons. I was always involved in anything musical that I could be involved in at school. So choirs and school band and jazz choir and wind ensemble and anything I could get my hands on. And I started writing songs more seriously when I was, around 13 or 14. And it wasn't until I was like in high school and I started a band, and I started getting interested in recording because the bass player in our band had like an 8-track recorder in his basement.
Tape or digital?
Tape. It was like cassette tapes, but it split it into 8 tracks. If I'm remembering right, it was really old. And we used to rehearse in his basement, and then we'd also started making our own recordings as a band. And that was my first experience of really getting to like multi-track something and realize like, this is crazy. We can like bounce this down, and I can be listening to this in my car like today. So I really got the bug of like do it yourself recording from like really early on. And
was it just microphones and plugging directly in all the different instruments?
Yeah. Okay. It was very rough and ready.
No effects.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't have a lot of clear memory of, there weren't racks of gear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was just a basement in the suburbs of Winnipeg.
But so exciting. 8 tracks to just work with and then bounce down to 1 or 2. And then you've got 6 more to record with. How incredible.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember.
What kind of music was that in that band? What kind of music were you listening to as well?
We were very pop rock. At that time, I was really influenced by the 90s singer-songwriter scene that was going on. It was like the time of Lilith Fair and all that stuff going on. You know, I was huge into like Sarah McLachlan and Ani DeFranco and Tori Amos, but I also, you know, shortly after that got super into like Coldplay and Radiohead and Keane and all sorts of stuff. So I kind of really bounced around. And this first band when I was in high school was, I don't know, I feel like we were kind of a blend of like some of my influences and some of the other guys. So let's put it this way. Our big exciting thing that we tried to do at one point was to pitch ourselves to open for Crash Test Dummies in Winnipeg. So we felt like we would fit opening for Crash Test Dummies. That tells you kind of our genre.
Please tell me that happened at some point.
It did not.
Oh.
But that's okay. That's okay.
That must have been right when Crash Test Dummies were putting out their Superman song and
yeah, they were huge. Yeah.
Winnipeg is such a massive musical city for a population of what, 600,000? Is it 800,000?
It might be around 800 now, I think.
But like just crazy amount of music and crazy amount of musicians and songwriters and producers and managers and label people that have come out of Winnipeg. Yeah. What do you think attributes to that? What do you think? Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think it's the long, cold winters, you know, like we're just inside playing music because there's nothing else to do unless you play sports, which I didn't. And also like, I feel like I got really nurtured by a lot of like, just like my private piano teacher was amazing, but also, you know, the high school I went to was super active with the arts. I went to a high school, Glenlawn Collegiate, and, you know, they had a really strong music program, a really strong theater program. So I felt like, I mean, looking at it now, I'm like, maybe that wasn't super normal, but that's all I knew, you know, and it was right up my alley.
Amazing. It's so important at that age, isn't it, to have an experience like that? If your interests are in the arts, to find a school that actually is supporting that. Is that just naturally the school that you went to, or did you choose to go to that school because of their reputation?
I did choose to go to that school. There were 2 schools in my area, and I was designated to go to the other one, but I actually did apply to go to to go to Glenlawn because of its strong reputation. And the funny thing was, 1 month into my first year there, the whole band department burned down in a huge fire.
No.
Yeah.
All the instruments damaged?
Oh, yeah. Oh. Like, I remember, I mean, and it was a big deal. It was all over the news. And I remember the Steinway in the theater was like burnt to a crisp. The piano strings were all twisted, and the photos in the newspaper. And it was a big deal. So, yeah, it was an interesting year.
What happened? They rebuilt, but then did they get all the instruments back through insurance, I guess?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I mean, the interesting part about it is that we spent most of that year having band class in portable classrooms. and making do in other ways. But, yeah, we got new instruments, and the school built a state-of-the-art new theater out of the old gym. They actually transformed the gym into like this beautiful theater. So I definitely got to experience some of that, which was really, really cool.
They say sometimes the best thing for the forest is a forest fire.
Right.
And I hate to say that because there's been so many forest fires this year in Canada, and all the smoke that's been coming down everywhere across the whole planet. But just, they do say though that having a situation like that just gives room for the new growth coming up. And the fact that fire happened in your first year rather than the middle or the end, it just gave you this beautiful new theater to work out of and to experience playing in somewhere like that, and brand new instruments that had never been played before as well. And did you get the Steinway replaced? Did the piano come back?
Oh yeah. No, they had, grand piano, upright pianos in all the practice rooms. It was pretty sweet.
Amazing. So, okay, you've got the 8-track and you're recording your band. Yeah. Were you making recordings for your school? Were you going, as much recording as you could, or was it just pretty much for that one band that you were with?
Yeah. So, I mean, that band, we recorded ourselves for our own kind of purposes, but we never really released anything. And then I after that band kind of broke up, we weren't together very long, maybe a year. I actually made a little 3-song cassette tape of my own with my bass player, with the bass player's rig. He recorded it, and I sold it at school for like $3.
Great. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so, that was my first time like releasing something. And then from there, I just, I got into digital recording soon after that, really. When I started realizing that I could record on a computer, and I got myself a little PC at the time, and I was recording on like Sonic Foundry Vegas and SoundForge and stuff like that, and Fruity Loops, like a really early Fruity Loops.
Seems archaic now, but back in the day, it was everything.
Oh, it was all there was.
Yeah.
And I was barely kind of grasping what was going on, but I just wanted to dig in and just try stuff. So my first like real recording that I made for myself as a solo artist was a live recording that I did at one of my gigs at a coffee house in Winnipeg. And I rented some mics from Long McQuaid and recorded it on ADAT, I think, if I remember right. And that was my first recording. I made like a whole, like a 12-song recording that was live at that coffee house. So, I really, even though I was doing an artist project at that time, I was always really, really hands-on with just making stuff myself, like everything from recording the stuff on the computer and doing things like that. And then also making like the booklets for the CDs or for the cassettes, like, cutting them at like Kinko's or Staples or whatever I was doing. I was literally sitting there with like the big paper cutter and making them and sending out mailing lists. And it was very informative of like everything that goes into trying to release something in a very do-it-yourself indie late 90s way. Mm-hmm. But I really got into that, and I pursued like an artist career for a really long time, basically because that's all I knew. Like when I'd seen all those examples, all my influences in the 90s were singer-songwriters that were performing songs they had written themselves. And because I liked writing songs and playing music, I was like, well, I guess I should go out and perform this stuff myself, because that's the example that I see. And so it wasn't until much later that I realized, no, actually, there's like a whole other wealth of roles that you can perform in music, recording and producing and songwriting that's behind the scenes. And once I finally hipped to that, I feel like things really opened up for me in terms of just my happiness and what I was doing and getting to try all sorts of different things.
There's a lot of people that think about getting into producing at the very beginning. And I hear from a lot of people that they just have this fear of how long it's going to take, or it's going to be too difficult, or it's going to be hard to understand, or anything like that. And I never really felt any of that. I just felt like a real fascination towards producing, towards recording. I just wanted to know, but I also knew that if I took on too much at the beginning, it would just sort of hit me like a tidal wave and knock me over. So I just really thought, let me just learn just a tiny little bit at a time and move forward from that. And I think your experience of the 8-track was a great piece of gear where you could just start to dive in there and then start to move on into digital. But did you have the same approach, or did you buy like a whole bunch of gear all at once? I know you rented the mics from Long and McQuaid, but just some people buy everything and then try to figure it out. And some people buy it one piece at a time and really try to master that as they go.
Oh, I was always on a shoestring budget, you know? But I would I would do things like rent microphones and then, you know, I didn't go out and buy a whole bunch of gear. I had, you know, my digital piano and a guitar and I had a little drum machine, you know, things like that. But no, I mean, even at the very beginning, I think I had pirated software, you know, like pirated Fruity Loops, because I had no money. I was just broke. I know.
Sailing the high seas.
I know. I was 19. You know, so I definitely didn't have like a huge studio just at my disposal. And I was also trying to make records as soon as I could. So I was just like trying to learn it all at once and also trying to do it, you know, with the resources that I had. So
when you learned that there's other jobs out there, there's other pathways in the music industry, it isn't just about being an artist. You can also be recording, you could be songwriting, you could be producing.
Yeah.
Did you start searching for other people to work with at this point? And were you approached by other artists to help them out with their own projects that were going on?
Yeah, that's kind of like where I feel like things started clicking into place more for me was, you know, it was like the mid 2000s, like around 2005. And I was still making records for myself at the time and learning something new with every single one. But then I started getting asked by a couple other artists in Toronto. This is when I was already in Toronto at this point and had been for
When did you move? How old
2001, early 2000.
Okay, cool.
So it was around 2005, 2006. I was starting to get asked occasionally to produce stuff for other people. And so I started doing that and a little bit of co-writing, but it wasn't until actually, believe it or not, it wasn't until like The Next Star, when you and I met, we're doing that show together. That was kind of a real turning point for me, because up until then I was still pursuing a solo project. And I remember the very last tour I ever did in Canada was I was like touring bookstores, like Chapters and Indigo bookstores. And I was on this one tour, and it was like, because it was the only way I sold CDs. I literally could sell like 40 CDs in 2 hours. Whereas if I played a venue, you're lucky if you sell a couple, you know?
You would play a show inside Chapters?
I would. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I'd either be set up right in the middle of all the bookshelves, or if they had a Starbucks and their manager was cool enough to let me set up near the Starbucks, then I'd be there, you know?
Oh, that's so great to be by the coffee shop and playing. Oh, so great. You could totally sell tons of CDs that way.
Exactly. And I felt like I was actually finding my people more that way than I was playing like, you know, club shows. So anyways, the point is, I was still frustrated though. I still felt like I was kind of beating my head against the wall. And I did this little tour with a friend of mine, Tyler Summers, who was also, he moved to Nashville shortly after that, actually. And he and I were kind of doing this tour together, a double bill tour. And we were both commiserating over feeling frustrated with our solo careers and all that stuff. And then I was just, at that point, I remember there was a moment where I said to him, you know what, when I get back to Toronto, I'm just going to put my stuff on hold, my own personal stuff. And I'm going to focus on writing and producing for other people because I'm enjoying that more. Mm-hmm. And literally the last day of the tour, like it was probably within 24 hours that I kind of made that decision. I got the call to do The Next Star.
That's
and I was
wild.
like, I know. And I was, it was totally out of the blue. And I was like, wow, I'm actually getting like to produce for someone on TV, which was interesting. But it was like, it felt like a turning point. It felt like the universe saying, yeah, pursue this, try this, go in this direction for a while, see what happens. So I started renting a studio space in the front of Canterbury Music Studios in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And I started calling up friends and having them come in and write songs together and just trying everything, a lot of collaborations. And I guess the rest was kind of history. I just started writing with more and more people and producing more stuff. And fast forward many years, and now I'm in Nashville.
Well, tell me about that. The move to Nashville from Toronto. It's something that I've thought about many, many times. I've never been brave enough to do it, though. I stay here in my close to home, and I love the Canadian way of life, but I sure love the idea of going to a place like Nashville where there's just so much going on and so exciting. But just tell me about what was in your mind at the time, like just thinking, heading down. Sorry, I'll just let you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd been spending time over the course of many years, taking writing trips to different cities. So I'd go to LA, I went to Nashville a little bit. I went to London, I went to New York. I was kind of just seeing where I might end up, and seeing what the energy was and what kind of music was I getting to make with people in these various places, because I felt like, I wanted to try my hand at hitting the global stage somehow. And there's a little bit of a ceiling for sometimes in Canada where when you're doing really Canadian based stuff where, you can have like a number one country song on country radio in Canada, but people don't really know about it outside of Canada. And that's super frustrating. So, you grow up with this feeling of wanting to try to reach a bigger audience. And so it was something that I was entertaining for a while. And then in 2016, I took a couple longer trips to Nashville, and I really felt like I was just connecting with the kind of music that I was making with people there. And it was calling my name, and I could still get back and forth between Toronto a lot because, I wasn't ready to like completely move at that point. I was like, okay, this is going to be an experiment.
Were you driving back and forth, flying back and forth?
I was often driving, sometimes flying. Yeah, it was a bit of everything. Okay. I know that drive super well now.
12 hours, right? 12 hours between Toronto and Nashville, roughly?
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, about 12.
That's a good, healthy drive, but it must be so exciting when you're heading there.
Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of listening done. You get a lot of podcasts listened to.
I have to tell you a funny story about country music, because when I was younger, I was definitely very, very opinionated about country music. And I just thought, it's not really for me. I was very much a pop guy. And at one point I had to play a show in Montreal with Corey Hart, and I was going down for 3 weeks to go and rehearse and then play this big show at the Bell Center. And I rented this car and put all my gear in there, this big station wagon thing. And I've loaded up my phone with music. I didn't have a data plan or anything, so I just loaded it up with tons of music. And I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to drive from Toronto to Montreal, and I'm going to listen to all this great, great music that I've always wanted to hear. And something happened when I plugged my phone into the rental car. It was just, my phone just basically fried itself. And I was just like, no. And what am I going to listen to now? That was my big worry, not about the phone being fried. I just thought I can't listen to this music. So I turned on the radio, and everything basically from just outside of Toronto to just outside of Montreal was all pretty much country music stations. And I just thought, oh no, this is going to be the longest drive ever. I started listening, and then I just thought, okay, open mind. Let's listen to this. And I swear to you, at the end of the first song, I was in tears. And then the second song, I just couldn't believe the payoff, how good it was. Mm-hmm. And the third song, I was completely converted into being a lover of country music, and just how great the songwriting is. One out of like the ninth song, 1 out of 10 songs would be about a pickup truck and drinking beer. And then I was kind of like, okay, I can do without that one. But the rest of them were just so good. The writing is so incredible that I think that's that's really, for me, like that's the biggest draw for Nashville, is just the quality of songwriting that's coming out of there.
Yeah.
I think you can't really compare to anywhere else in the world.
Absolutely. I felt the same way. It was just like, wow, people are really wanting to say something in these songs. And that, as someone who came from a traditional songwriting background, just learning to write around a piano or a guitar, even though that's not really all we do now these days.
True.
It definitely there's still that foundation of, is the song good? Like maybe the production's awesome, but like, is the song good? That still matters here.
Yeah. I always say you can't pick up the camera and start shooting the film until the script rocks, and just the script has got to be amazing. The song's got to be amazing. And I think that's really important in a place like Nashville, that maybe some people do, but majority of people don't start producing until the song is just fantastic, where it's really moving you from a really stripped down fashion, stripped down form. Anyways, let me get back. Sorry, I interrupted you you took a couple of extended trips to Nashville, and then you drove back to Toronto, or did you just stay in one of those extended trips and just keep staying there?
Well, I started renting a space here in the beginning of 2017. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm going to be back and forth a bit, because I had no idea, how busy I would be. And it got busy pretty quick. And so I found myself spending more and more time here. But I still work with Canadian artists. So I do head up to Toronto, here and there, and I'm working with people there. And sometimes they come down here. I actually find that I probably see more Canadians here.
Right.
than I ever did in Toronto, because, all the Canadian artists, if they aren't living in Nashville, they come here to write songs, so it's been great. I've been able to stay in touch with all my Canadian buddies, but also get to branch out down here.
Wow. And so work starts picking up like crazy in Nashville, and there's no reason to come back to Toronto other than the occasional producing and writing gig that you have up there. And then the artists really just start lining up outside your door. And are you starting to get to a point where you can be very picky as to who you're working with, or do you love working with anybody and everybody? What's your way of choosing jobs?
Well, I'm always looking for something that I'm inspired by, and I'm always looking to try new things too, because, I feel like a lot of the work I do stems out of just trying some random writing sessions with people, with new artists. And I signed a publishing deal with Sony Nashville at the beginning of 2020. And I found that's been really cool for meeting a lot more of the up and coming artists that are being signed to labels here and are starting to get their projects going. And so, it's a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, until you kind of find the things that are working in the projects that keep coming back, and you keep writing with someone. Like Nikki Guyton was a great example of that. She and I were writing together pretty early on in my time here.
How did you guys meet?
Through a writing session. I got a call to do a writing session with another Canadian, Victoria Banks. She was signed to Rare Spark Publishing at the time, and Scott Sherrod from Rare Spark. He and I had met, and he was liking what I was doing and what he was hearing. So he, in that very Nashville way, he immediately wanted to try throwing me into some sessions with his writers like Victoria. And just trying stuff. That's what people do here. They're always collaborating. Even if you're not signed to a publishing deal with a publisher, they're still going to be, if they like what they're hearing from you, they're going to try different collaborations with you and see what happens. So he called me one day and he's like, hey, would you be into doing a session with Victoria Banks and Nikki Guyton? And it's funny because I was actually supposed to be in Canada at the time. And I might have even been in Canada already, and I was spending some time there. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'm definitely there. Like, cause I was a fan, like I loved Nikki's voice and I'd heard some of her stuff before, and I'd like, oh man, yeah, absolutely. So I flew back early. I remember I changed my flight, came back for the session, and we really hit it off in that writing session. You know, we wrote a song that we all still love. It's never come out, but we all love it. And it was the thing that just started the relationship. And then we kept collaborating. We kept doing writing sessions and loving working together. And I did a song. We wrote and I produced a song for a film called Breakthrough that starred Chrissy Metz and Topher Grace. And it was like, you know, pretty big film a few years back. And that was the first thing that I produced for Mickey that was released. And that was kind of the start of me being more than just a co-writer with her. And so that just, you know, we just kept collaborating over the years, and that turned into an EP, and that turned into an album, and kind of the rest is history.
But then the accolades started coming with the music that you're making, and all of these amazing things that happened on that project, your involvement in there. And could you tell me what it's like to play Super Bowl 56? Like, that just sounds incredible. It is 56, right? I tried to decipher the Roman numerals that were coming at me, and I think it was 56.
You're better than me. I've just always looked at it and go, LVI. Yeah, okay, I think that's, right. But I think that's right. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, playing the Super Bowl was surreal.
Did that happen before the Grammy nominations, or was that sort of something that happened afterwards?
They were the same year, same spring. They were 2022.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, with Mickey, it was just, the whole thing was surreal because, I mean, she'd been kind of toiling away in what her self-described obscurity for 10 years, signed to Capitol in Nashville, but she felt like she hadn't really found her voice. And when I started writing with her, she was really starting to get very intentional about what she wanted to say as an artist. And she was starting to be more outspoken about issues and social issues, which is hard in country music. But I think that's the thing that really worked. And when we started seeing response, it was surprising as well, because, you know, like we went out on, we wrote the song called What Are You Gonna Tell Her, with Victoria Banks again, and another Canadian, Emily. It was 3 Canadians and Mickey. And we wrote the song, What Are You Gonna Tell Her?
Taking over the world, aren't we? We're totally taking over the world.
That's right. And we wrote the song, What Are You Gonna Tell Her? Which was actually about, you know, the feeling of frustration with women's roles in society. And Mickey had just come back from an industry event where she felt like very frustrated with the dynamic. And so she came in all pent up with all these ideas. And then, you know, in the conversation, she turned to Victoria, who has 2 little daughters, and she said, what are you going to tell them? You know, like, the idea of like, do you warn your daughters, like, hey, by the way, just so you know, this is the landscape. It might be a little frustrating. Here's some obstacles you might encounter. Or do you not say anything? Is that worse? Is it worse to say something? You know, like, and we started talking about it because we'd all been writing together a lot. So we were pretty close, and we ended up writing this song that made us all cry that day. And we thought, well, this is not a radio banger. Nothing's ever going to happen. And then the label was just like, oh my gosh, can you perform this at Country Radio Seminar in 2 weeks? Which was like, it's a big deal in Nashville. It's like all the radio people from all over the country come, and it's just this big radio conference. And so Mickey and I went out and performed it, just the 2 of us, on the stage at the Ryman, to a whole theater of radio people.
Wow.
And Mickey turned to me before we went out there, and she's like, I think this might be the end of my career. You know, but it was a kind of amazing. I mean, I made it through without crying, and everyone stood up, gave us a standing ovation after, even though we said some pretty outspoken things in the song, and it's Nashville, and it's tough in that area. And then that just kind of led to one thing after another. We had momentum suddenly with the label, and we made an EP that was pretty outspoken. This was now in 2020, so a lot of social issues were happening. And Mickey was like driving the train. She's like, let's do this. Let's say some stuff. So,
Incredible.
I think it was like an example of, we'd been building a collaboration for a long time. And then we just kind of hit a stride, and we felt like we were making something magical, the group of us together,
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
And then the Grammy nominations came out, and just best country album being one of them. Like, just, that's incredible.
Yeah,
there's so many country albums out there, and yours happened to be one of the nominations for the Grammys. It's incredible.
It was wild. I remember I had a writing session that day, the day the nominations came out, and it was with Emily, who was obviously a major songwriter on that record as well, and another artist, Madeline Edwards, and the three of us were kind of getting ready to start. And then we were like, oh, wait, no, we got to tune in online to like the broadcast of the nominations. Cause we had a feeling there might be some people we knew that were getting nominated or whatever. And there had been some like little whispers about, oh, maybe we should tune in. And like, okay, sure. Why not? And then suddenly like the nominations are coming up on the screen, and it's like best country album and best country performance and all this stuff. And it's like, what is happening? So we basically couldn't write that day.
Of course.
We had to pop the bubbly.
did you have a hint or an inkling that it might be possible, or it was a complete surprise?
No, I didn't really know, like, because you never know. Like, that stuff's kept pretty secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a street named after you in Winnipeg right now?
No.
There should be.
No. They have to do that for Neil Young and Burton Cummings and everyone else first. They probably have, actually. I mean, they had Burton Cummings Theater, and
that's right.
Maybe I'm next.
I'm going to put in a motion to make that happen, even though I have no political sway in Winnipeg at all, but I'll see what I can do. And then waiting behind the stage to go out and play for all the radio people is one thing, but then waiting behind the scenes to go out and play at the Super Bowl is a whole other level. Just, you're going to be seen by billions of people.
I got the call that Mickey was going to do the anthem at the Super Bowl, like around Christmas time before the Super Bowl. And they asked me to come up with the arrangement. So I worked up that choir part. Like Mickey and I sat together, figured out the whole thing. And even though it was, not a song I wrote, I definitely still felt incredibly like it was my baby, and incredibly nervous because I was like, well, like, who am I to do this? Especially because I'm Canadian. Like, I hope I do the American national anthem justice.
Did you feel like the soldiers were going to find out and take you, grab you by the shoulders and lift you off the piano?
Right. All those strong football players just come in and kick me out. Yeah. No, it was pretty amazing. And I mean, like, just the hugeness of it. Like, I'm not a huge sports fan, so, it's not like I watched the Super Bowl every year growing up or anything, not like the Grammys. But this was like, it struck me just how massive that thing is. I mean, I was in the dressing room and Snoop Dogg just walked by and went to his little dressing room that was further on in the dressing room area. And I was like, that just happened.
Yeah. Did you have in-ears? Like, could you hear the crowd, or was it very isolating?
Yeah, we were on ears for sure. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I played on stage many times, and always with in-ears, and it's such a funny thing, isn't it? Like, you have to give this impression that you're having the time of your life, and you're playing, but there's so much going on in your mind of just like, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up. And then there's also the chatter that you can hear from behind the scenes of all the people that are working behind the scenes saying, okay, now this has to happen. This is going on. And it's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it? It's just to give the impression to the audience that you are just having the time of your life. But meanwhile, just mentally, there's just so much going on. And in something like that, I can't imagine the amount of stress mentally to play something like that, like the Super Bowl.
Well, and so much preparation goes into it. I mean, there's so many moving parts, everything from the choreography to the wardrobes to the fittings to, like, we were rehearsing for several days in LA beforehand. We had the choir, and it was really something cool to be a part of.
could you take me through what an average day is like for you in your role as a producer, and just explain to the listener what your average day is like?
Sure. I mean, I feel like my life is my days are kind of split between producing and writing. So half the time, like I'm getting up early, I'm checking out references for whatever I'm planning to write that day. If there's a writing session, I come into my studio and I often am like kind of maybe workshopping some ideas myself to get ready before the session. People come in at 11 and we're writing a song and we're cutting vocals, hopefully by mid-afternoon. And then I'm usually here working till the end, till getting something to hand in that day. And then, there's times where I'll also be spending a lot more extra time fleshing out a demo for something, or if it's the kind of write where there really isn't such thing as a demo, like the things we're recording are probably going to come out. Sometimes that's something where I'll spend even more time on before handing something in. But that would be like a typical kind of writing day for me. And then other days where I'm just in production mode. Sometimes that's just me here all day long, throwing spaghetti at the wall and fleshing out ideas and working on arrangements. Last week, for example, I had an artist in town and we actually went and were tracking with a whole band at Addiction Studios, and we did 2 songs and it was, an entire band playing to pre-production that I had done previously for the demos of the songs. So it was already pretty fleshed out. And then, I bring in some players to kind of replace some parts and enhance some parts and sweeten some things. And then I spent the next 2 days doing vocals with the artist here in my room. And so now, for example, today I'm comping and editing vocals. And so no day is really the same. But there's kind of the same kind of things that kind of repeat. It goes in cycles. It's writing, it's editing vocals. I do a lot of that stuff hands-on. I don't have a team of people who are like one person over here editing the drum part and one person over here tuning a vocal. Like, no, I'm doing it myself. So it's just a lot of hours really spent here in this chair doing stuff. And I'm an introvert, so I love it.
Yeah, they say that producers have been in lockdown for decades, right? It's just the pandemic didn't really affect us too much, did it? It's not much has changed.
Well, I was busier during the pandemic than ever in my life because of all the stuff that happened with Mickey. We made an EP and an album, and I was really grateful for the fact that I didn't feel, because I've always kind of been very do-it-yourself and think outside the box and having to produce records in all sorts of creative ways based on budgetary restrictions or whatever. I felt like when the pandemic hit and everything moved to like Zoom and stuff, it was not difficult to conceive of how to try to make that happen. Like there were some challenges, but it was pretty quick to like get going with doing vocals remotely. Mickey was in LA and I was here and we were cutting vocals over Zoom. I was really grateful for many years of having to come up with creative, weird solutions for how to do things when the pandemic hit. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about becoming a producer and maybe they're a little scared of making that first step?
I can think of so many things. I'm trying to figure out like which would be the priority number one thing, but I don't know that I have that organized a hierarchy in my head right now.
Yeah, or just a few things, even just you could quickly just jot out a couple of things.
I would say listen to and internalize as much music as you can. Just study other productions, study what's happening on records that you love, and study the arrangements and study the sounds and study a lot of things. so that, you're not just getting stuck in one kind of mindset about what something should sound like. Inevitably, when you pull in enough different influences into your brain and into your heart and into your existence, it's going to come out of you down the road in your own way. And I feel like having that kind of like reference point of like, here's the kind of sounds I like, it's not that you want everything you do to sound one way, but it helps if you have sort of like your own unique spin on things and what you like. And that kind of gets to my next point of advice, which is trust your gut. If you love something, it doesn't matter if you've had a ton of training to be a producer, or if you've never, produced anything in your life. If you're liking something and it sounds great and it's just like getting you, even if you've done it in a completely technically stupid way, if it works, it works. And so I think I've known some producers who are like too scared to kind of dive in. And there's so much to learn, and technical knowledge is important, but like at the end of the day, when someone hears it and it moves them, it doesn't matter how you got there. It just matters that they're hearing your music and they're digging it. And if they're digging it, then you've done a good job. And so production is this nebulous thing in many ways, where music is a nebulous thing. It's completely subjective. It's like one person may love what you do, the other person may not love what you do. So obviously try to educate yourself, try to learn as much as you can, study what other people do, and then just really trust your gut and just try to make something that makes you feel something. And then that's your best chance at connecting with someone outside of yourself, I think.
That's amazing. I heard Rick Rubin the other day say, if everybody loves what you do, you haven't done your job well enough.
Yes. That's true. If everyone loves what you do, yeah, exactly. Are you being the strongest, most extreme version of yourself? If everyone loves what you do? Because when you think about it, like, yeah, some of the biggest artists, there's people who are really polarized by them. Some people just love everything they do. Some people can't stand them. But it's better than just being like, yeah, they're okay. Everyone just feels this, it's okay. Yeah, I don't mind it.
My last question to you, we could go on and on forever. I love hearing your answers. It's great. Is there anything, let me see if I can phrase this properly. Is there anything that you could say to a young female that would help them in this journey steer around something that maybe you experienced in your career? Something that would help them get from point A to point B a little bit easier or a little bit better?
Trying to distill my thoughts.
It's all good.
It's a tough thing. Like,
or we can make it a simpler question. It could be,
okay.
Do you have any words of advice of anybody who would like to get into the music industry?
That is not a question. My answer to that is always like, if you can see yourself being happy doing anything else, do that. You kind of have to feel like it's like, this is all I ever wanted to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have to wake up thinking about this. You have to go to sleep thinking about this. You have to go through the entire day thinking about this, and maybe even have a couple of dreams about this.
Yeah. I would say, well, this might be, I don't know if this is a weird thing to say or not, but this is something that has been important for me. And that is to work really, really hard at being as good as I can. And that sounds simple. It's like, well, is everyone's working hard. But I do feel like I've had that feeling of having to push harder, because I feel like as a woman, we aren't always given the same kind of benefit of the doubt. And I think that you kind of have to shock and awe as much as you can. Style and substance. It's got to be there. And it's just the fact. So, be self-sufficient, be bold, be confident, educate yourself, learn as much as you can, be daring, and just fucking do it, even when you feel discouraged, you know? And that's true for anyone, not just a woman in the music industry, but, you know, there's a ton of people wanting to be in this chair. So, you know, what makes you the person that gets to do that? You know, it's an earned right. It's an earned privilege to be able to do that. And you really got to work for it.
Awesome answer. You did it.
Thanks. It's a complex subject. It's like, oh,
I know, but it's a great answer. It's fantastic. I love when people take their time before they jump into the answer. It's great. It's great.
I had a moment I was thinking about how I used to go into Long McQuaid in Toronto. And did you ever meet my husband, Mark?
I've never met him. We've walked past each other many times.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to meet at some point.
Well, I remember there being so many times where we'd go into Long McQuaid together, and before we'd get there, I'd be like, hey, don't hold my hand. Don't be affectionate with me. When we go in there, I'm not your girlfriend or I'm not your wife. We're just going in and we're musicians. You know? And it's like, when you ask me that question about what advice would I give to a woman, it's like, it's kind of depressing because I feel like, unfortunately, all I have to go on is the way I've coped with certain things. And it's when I hear myself say stuff like that, it's like, yeah, that's kind of a bummer that we need to do that. But like, even now I go into like a trade show or something. And, you know, if I'm standing next to a dude, one of my friends, or if Mark's there with me, because he's in the music industry, we often do stuff like that together. You know, it's pretty common that the people at these booths, these manufacturers, will often just kind of direct their conversation to the dude standing next to me. And it's like, okay, it's just the benefit of the doubt. You know, it's something that we're still struggling with. And the only way it's going to get better is when, you know, more and more women get into production and are visible and are getting hits and succeeding. And it's going to take a long time.
Yes, but eventually this is what I hope for as well. I really hope that it's equal. I don't like these numbers, 2%, 12%, you know, 50-50, man. It's just like whoever wants to get into this industry, do it and make it rock and, you know, make those numbers equal always. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, on one hand, like what kind of amazing music can be made from having better representation? You know, more even. It's like when you think about government or companies, you know, and you hear all the time about how when there's a representation of the population, it's always turns out better, you know, when there's an accurate representation. And so, I don't know, I'd be curious to know what the world's going to be like when we have, you know, a lot more women producers out there.
Absolutely. I love working with female artists over male artists all the way because I feel that with female artists, we can go into any subject matter. Any subject matter is acceptable, is okay. And when I work with a male artist, quite often it's like, I'll never talk about that. I won't talk about this. I won't talk about that. It's just like, it's very narrow band as to what you can actually write about.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I just think that, well, there's a Tegan and Sarah record that I love that is, completely made. Everybody that was on that record is female. It's fantastic. And I love the subject matter that is in every song. And I love the sound of the record. And it's very different than what you normally hear. Yeah. And I want more of that. Definitely want more of that because it's really great. It's really inspiring. It's different. It really is different and it feels great. Feels great. And there should be much more of that going on. Much more of that. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Do you want me to use that last part about the Long McQuaid story? Did you want me to edit that part out?
I'd be okay with it if you wanted to use it, if you find there's a spot that it works.
Absolutely. Yeah. I thought it was great. I didn't know if you wanted to share that or not.
No, I'm not. I'm not reluctant to say that to people. Okay. I don't bring it up usually. Like, it's not usually the first thing I'll say, but yeah, you know, it's definitely a truth.
I think it's important to hear.
Yeah, it might be depressing, but It's the way it is.
But this is why we're doing it, right? Is to get some of the hard truths out there.
Yeah.
And to really open the door and have an open, honest conversation about this. And if there's anybody out there that can hear this and be inspired to make changes in this world, and maybe the person that's working that booth is going to hear this podcast and just think, I'm going to say goodbye to the old me and wake up to the new me, and I won't be that person anymore. I'll change my ways. Hopefully that would be great.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Karen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
From the bottom of my heart, this was a great conversation. I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit more, and it's been amazing. And I hope to see you in Nashville or back up here in Toronto anytime. That would be great to hang out with you and continue the conversation. Yeah,
we should definitely grab a drink next time I'm up.
Yeah. Karen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being part of this, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Women in the Music Industry, coming soon. Let's embark on this incredible journey together, celebrating the women who are reshaping the music business one note at a time. If you enjoyed hearing this podcast, please take a moment and give it a like, a rating, or a follow. Your support helps immensely. We'll see you next time.